Let me ask you something. If you're 50 years old or somewhere close to it, and you have about $100,000 saved up and invested for retirement, how do you feel? If I had to guess, I would probably say somewhere between anxious and defeated. Maybe you've seen those headlines telling you you need 1.5 million to retire, or 2 million, or even more. And then you look at your account balance and that number feels impossibly far away. But here's what those headlines don't tell you. The median American, age 45 to 55, has about $100,000 invested. Not $500,000, not $1 million, $100,000. Which means if you're sitting with $100,000 invested by the age of 50, you're not behind some imaginary, ideal, perfect person. You're right where the typical American is. And here's what I truly believe and what today's video is going to show. If you make smart decisions over the next 15 to 17 years, retirement is still very much possible. But from this point forward, your decisions do matter. So today, I want to walk through what these numbers could look like. We're going to use 3 different return scenarios, look at the real role Social Security can play, the moves you can make that can dramatically change your outcome, and look at the choices you still have, because you might have more choices than you otherwise think. Before we get into any numbers, let me put a real person on the board. Someone close to the actual median American. They are 50 years old. They have an annual income of $78,000. Current investments, $100,000. Going forward, they're going to be saving 15% of their income, so $11,700 a year. Their target retirement age is 67, so full retirement age. And the Social Security benefit at full retirement age would be $2,500 a month or $30,000 a year. They do not have a pension. Now, here's something really important that I want you to look at before we look at any of the projections. At a 15% savings rate on a $78,000 income, this person is setting aside $11,700 a year, assuming pre-tax. This leaves them approximately $66,300 a year, and that matters a lot because one of the biggest mistakes people make when planning for retirement is assuming that they have to replace 100% of their income. But in reality, most people are not living on 100% of their income. The real goal isn't to replace your income in retirement, it's to replace your spending. And in this situation, you're already living on $66,300. So that is the number we want to keep in our heads as we walk through the next 3 scenarios. That's the benchmark we're going to measure against. Now let's look at what actually happens to this person's money over the next 17 years, from age 50 to 67, under 3 different return assumptions. Now, I want to be very clear about something. Nobody knows what future market returns will be. We can't predict that. But if we use a range of possible outcomes, it gives us a better understanding. It allows us to plan more intelligently. So scenario 1, we'll assume they can capture a 5% annual return. This is our conservative case. Now, this might be the scenario that makes a lot of people nervous. Getting a 5% annual rate of return for the next 17 years, starting with a baseline investment of $100,000 and contributing $11,700 a year. Here's what might happen. By the age of 67, they might have a portfolio of about $532,000. Assuming we're willing to use a flexible withdrawal rate of 5%, that would give us roughly $26,600 a year. Their Social Security benefit at full retirement age would provide $30,000 a year. So their total retirement income would be about $56,600 a year or about $4,700 a month. So in retirement, this individual is bringing in about $56,600 a year. But in pre-retirement years, they were living on $66,300. So we still have a pretty meaningful gap. We're short by about $9,700 a year. But before you panic, let's consider what might happen as someone goes into retirement. Payroll taxes disappear. There's no more FICA, no more Medicare contributions, and that alone might put anywhere from $5,000 to $6,000 back in your pocket on an income that was $78,000. And importantly, no more retirement contributions. Now, admittedly, we were already comparing to what their income was post-savings, but this is still an important point to remember. Once you get to retirement, you no longer need to continue continue saving for retirement. Potentially lower federal income tax. Retirement income, depending where it's coming from, is often taxed at much more favorable rates than, say, W-2 income or 1099 income. Earned income is the most heavily taxed type of income. Then we have the other miscellaneous items. Maybe you aren't commuting as much anymore, so your transportation costs go down. Maybe you're not having to replenish your work wardrobe or any other work-related costs. A lot of these costs tend to disappear as people go into retirement, but they might be replaced by other leisure activity costs. And maybe if you go into retirement, maybe you're close to having a paid-off home, so you might be mortgage-free, and this can free up more room in your budget. When you factor in those real-world expense reductions, the 5% scenario doesn't look like a disaster. It looks like it's tight, but a workable retirement, especially if you enter it debt-free. And here's the part that gives this scenario real staying power. Social Security is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. That is $30,000 of inflation-protected, guaranteed income that's going to last a lifetime before you even have to touch your portfolio. This is really the foundation that the entire retirement is being built around. Scenario 2, let's assume you can capture a 7% annual rate of return. This is more in line with historical averages once you factor in inflation. 7% is really more in line with what a balanced portfolio has returned in the long term, again adjusted for inflation. So we're looking at a portfolio that has a balanced mix, maybe some bonds and stocks or other investment types, but it's more of a balanced approach. Fast forward to the age of 67, and this portfolio has grown to about $677,000. At this point, if we're willing to use a starting but flexible withdrawal rate of 5%, that would give us an income of $33,800 a year from the investment portfolio. Social Security would still be $30,000 a year, and now we have total retirement income of $63,800 a year, or about $5,300 a month. Now look at what just happened. Our retirement income is $63,800, whereas our pre-retirement income was $66,300. These numbers are nearly identical. And here's the thing, that retirement income might actually feel more comfortable. Remember, you're no longer paying payroll taxes, you might be facing a lower tax bill, and you don't have the miscellaneous work-related costs, commuting, lunches out, things like that. This is the moment where many people might realize retirement isn't about replacing 100% of your income. It is about replacing spending. And at 7% returns, this person is almost exactly there. Scenario number 3, let's look at a 9% annual return. This is a very strong, optimistic market case. So let's look at a scenario where the market does extremely well over the next 17 years. Let's say we're able to capture an inflation-adjusted real rate of return of 9%. What might that grow to? Yes, we know this is our best case scenario. By the age of 67, our portfolio might grow to $865,000. If we're again willing to use a 5% withdrawal rate, being willing to be flexible with this withdrawal rate, we would get a starting income of $43,300 a year. Social Security again provides $30,000 a year. Our total retirement income is $73,300 a year, or just over $6,000 a month. Now, this is the fascinating scenario. This is the fun one, because if we can capture a real 9% rate of return, we can get to the point where this retiree might be able to live on about $73,000 in retirement. That actually exceeds their pre-retirement income. They were only living on about $66,000. And now they have a higher income, they face lesser taxes, they're not paying payroll taxes, they have lesser commuting costs, so this would be an even better situation than it was in their pre-retirement years. This person isn't just okay in retirement, they may actually be living better than they were while working. So let's compare each of these situations side by side. If we capture a 5% real return, by the age of 67, 17 years down the road, this individual could grow their $100,000 portfolio to a little bit over $500,000. But on the other end of the spectrum, if we can capture a 9% rate of return, they get a portfolio of about $865,000. In the 5% situation, our portfolio using a 5% withdrawal would give us an income of about $26,600 a year. At a 7% rate of return, we'd be able to capture something like $33,800 a year as an income from a portfolio. And in the 9% situation, utilizing a 5% withdrawal in retirement, we'd get an income of about $43,300 from the portfolio. A big picture, looking at the 5% scenario, our total retirement income would be about $56,600. Compared to income during our working years, this leaves us a gap of about $9,700. But if we look at the 7% scenario, our total retirement income would be just under $64,000. Here, we're only looking at a gap from our pre-retirement income of about $2,500 a year. And then in the 9% scenario, we actually end up with a surplus. We have more money in retirement, looking at a total retirement income of $73,300. Even in our 5% scenario, this still could be workable. It might be tight. I'm not saying it's a lavish lifestyle, but it could be workable. It depends on what our retirees' expenses are. But many people who go into retirement do face lower taxes. They do face lower expenses. Their income is not taxed in the same way. So this could be workable. I also think it's worth considering that we didn't ask our investor to be ultra aggressive. We gave them a target savings rate of 15%. And sure, you may feel that one. You may have to tighten up your budget a bit. But if you make it to the age of 50 and you only have $100,000 invested and you want to make sure that you have security in retirement, you might have to stretch a little bit. You might have to invest a little bit more than you otherwise would. But I do think setting a target savings of 15% if you're feeling behind is reasonable. Now, could we ask our investor to be more aggressive, or could they simply be more aggressive on their own and say save maybe 20 or 25% of their income? Absolutely. And if they did, they might make their financial situation even better. Maybe they experience the optimistic scenario, and maybe they're even able to retire at, say, the age of 65 as opposed to 67. If you're willing to make sacrifices and invest more, you're likely to end up in a much better situation. Here's what I love most about showing you those three scenarios. It's not just looking at the return you get, but realizing that you have choices. There are actionable things you can do that might move you from the 5% scenario over to the 7% scenario, or things that you can do, actionable steps you can take to close the gap in the 5% scenario. Let me walk you through what some of these choices might be. Choice number one, work one extra year. Let's say this is our 5% scenario fix. Let's say we're looking at our conservative scenario, that 5% situation. Remember that we had a gap of about $9,700 in income. So rather than retiring at the age of 67, let's say our individual retires at the age of 68. This gives one more year of contributions, adding another $11,700 to the portfolio. Let's say that portfolio continues growing for one more year at 5%. It grows by another $26,600. So the total portfolio impact of one additional year is approximately $38,000 to $40,000 more invested. At a 5% withdrawal, that's an extra $1,900 or $2,000 per year from portfolio income that you would be able to take inflation adjustments on over time. But there's another piece of this puzzle that happens if you delay retirement by one more year. Delaying Social Security from age 67 to 68 increases the monthly benefit by about 8%. On a $2,500 monthly benefit, that's an extra $200 a month. So that would give us an additional $2,400 per year, guaranteed, inflation adjusted, for life. So one extra year of work does two things simultaneously. It grows our portfolio and it grows our Social Security. The combined impact of one extra year is roughly $4,300 to $4,400 more in annual retirement income. Remember, the 5% scenario gap was about $9,700 a year. One extra year of work, just one, cuts that gap almost in half. If you are willing to do 2 extra years, the 5% scenario becomes very comfortable. And remember, in the scenario, we haven't yet factored in any potential reduction in expenses that you might experience as you go into retirement. So if you were to factor those in, if your expenses do decline as you go into retirement, you very well might be in a very comfortable situation by working one extra year. But of course, it does depend on your situation. Choice number 2, delay Social Security, even partially. Social Security is one of the single most powerful guaranteed income streams that Americans have in retirement. And when you decide to claim, has a huge consequence on what your retirement income looks like. Here's what it might look like for this individual to claim at different ages if their full retirement age benefit was $2,500 a month. If they were to claim early at the age of 62, they'd have a monthly benefit of about $1,750. That would be an annual income of about $21,000. This is a $9,000 reduction in benefits compared to claiming at full retirement age. If they were to claim at full retirement age, they'd get about $30,000 a year. If they delayed until the age of 68, they'd get about $32,400 a year. Delayed until the age of 69, about $34,800 a year. And if they delayed all the way until the age of 70, they'd get about $37,200 a year. This is an increase from the full retirement age by about $7,200 a year. Every year you delay claiming after full retirement age, your benefit gets an increase of 8% on an annual basis. That is a hard guaranteed return to beat anywhere else. And then keep in mind that this income lasts for the rest of your life and comes with inflation adjustments. That's incredibly powerful. So for someone in that 5% scenario where things were running a little bit tight, there is incredible power to being able to delay when they claim benefits by a year or two. Choice number 3, the real enemy is fixed expenses, not those individual lattes. Now I want to pause here and talk about something that I feel pretty strongly about. A lot of financial advice for when people feel behind focuses on the small stuff. Maybe brew your coffee at home, skip the avocado toast, cut subscriptions. And those things matter, they do, but more at the margins. If you really want to retire comfortably, address the big things, the big decisions. This is where you're really going to move the needle. A car payment of $550 a month carried indefinitely costs you $6,600 over the course of a year. That's more than a latte a day. And it's one of the most common quiet wealth killers in American households. An oversized home with a mortgage that ultimately stretches into your 70s creates a fixed obligation that your portfolio has to continuously support. Lifestyle inflation. Upgrading the car or the home or their vacations anytime your income increases is exactly how people end up making more but saving less. Or supporting adult children financially, while a deeply personal topic, can absolutely be something that delays or derails your retirement. Depending on the circumstance, a 50-year-old earning $78,000 a year who has no car payment, a nearly paid off home, and modest spending might be in a far safer position financially than a $150,000 earner carrying $4,000, $5,000 or $6,000 in fixed monthly obligations. Income isn't what determines retirement security. Ultimately, it's the gap between your income and your fixed expenses. So let's say we're in that 5% situation. What are the biggest levers that you could pull that aren't considering delaying retirement by 1 year? Consider, is it realistic to enter retirement with your mortgage fully paid off or close to it? Can you get to a place with no car payment by the age of 65? Maybe paying cash for modest vehicles? Or are there reoccurring obligations that could be reduced or eliminated over the next decade? Every $100 you reduce in fixed monthly expenses, you reduce your needed withdrawal from your portfolio by about $1,200 on an annual basis. Over the course of 25 years, that's $30,000 more of portfolio longevity. Remember, compounding works in both ways. Choice number 4, maximize the match. This is a guaranteed return that you can't beat. We'll keep this one short because this one's a non-negotiable. If your employer offers a 401k match, you want to capture this. You don't want to leave free money on the table. A 50% match on 6% contributions is a 50% guaranteed immediate return on that money. No market return comes close to that. So before anything else, capture the full match. Every year you don't, it's gone permanently. Choice number 5. Catch-up contributions. This is the age 50 plus advantage. Once you turn 50, the IRS gives you the option to do something that's incredibly powerful. Make catch-up contributions. In 2026, the standard 401k contribution limit is $24,500. At 50 and older, you can contribute an additional $8,000 as a catch-up for a total of $32,500. For IRAs, the limit increases from $7,500 to $8,600 with the catch-up. And here's the thing many people don't know. Once you hit the age of 60, the options get even better. The IRS created a super catch-up window specifically for ages 60 through 63, where the catch-up contribution jumps to $11,250 instead of $8,000, bringing the total 401k limit to $35,750 for that age group. That window is pretty powerful, and it's designed specifically for this moment because many people in this age group are in their peak earning years. Now, if we consider our example where our individual was making $78,000 a year, it might be incredibly hard for them to max out their 401k. It very well could require significant lifestyle adjustments or simply may not be possible. We're not saying that you have to max out your 401k or IRA, but if you can, it is a very powerful move you can make. Every dollar you contribute at the age of 50 still has 17 years of compounding before you retire. And if you can capture a 7% rate of return, those dollars double every 10 years. So you very well could have 1.5 doublings ahead of you. I want to share something that I think reframes the conversation a bit for people who feel a bit behind. The years between 60 and 70 for many Americans often ends up being their most powerful financial decade. Here's what's happening during this time. For many, they're in peak earnings. Most people are at or near the top of their career earning capacity. This could be their peak savings ability. Maybe the mortgage is shrinking or it's gone. The kids are grown and off the home payroll, and their lifestyle costs tend to stabilize. Every year worked is a year the portfolio doesn't need to fund. Every year worked is potentially a layer of Social Security delay, up to that 8% more per year. Every year worked is one fewer year the portfolio has to last. And sometimes I don't think that last point gets enough attention. If you retire at 67 versus 62, you very well could be looking at a retirement that now might last, say, 25 years as opposed to 30. And when you shift the time horizon like that, it does move the math meaningfully. One extra year of working at age 66 can sometimes improve your retirement outcome more than 5 extra years of savings in your 30s. Because at 66, everything compounds simultaneously. More contributions, less withdrawal time, higher Social Security, and a shorter runway to fund. This is not a reason to delay joy or sacrifice everything, and we're not saying work forever, but this is a high leverage window, and if you're going to utilize it, you want to take full advantage of it. And I want to be very careful here because I don't want this video to turn into a message that says work harder, save every penny, sacrifice everything, and then maybe you'll be okay. That's not the point. And quite frankly, I think extreme deprivation backfires. Often it leads to people feeling burnt out, and you don't want to continue grinding it out, sacrificing everything for, say, the next 17 years, only to arrive at retirement feeling like, okay, now finally I can start to live. I don't want you to have a life like that. The goal is to get to a stable income by the age of 67 and not have to sacrifice everything along the way. So stability by 67 very well could mean getting the employer match, always, without exception, saving consistently at a rate that feels sustainable. Here we set 15% as a target. This is not a fantasy number. This could be reducing fixed obligations so that your future self has breathing room. It's about making intentional decisions about Social Security and retirement timing. And truly, it's about avoiding catastrophic mistakes like panic selling or taking on major debt in your 60s or large cash outs. And within this framework, you can still travel, you can still dine out, you can still enjoy your life today. The difference is spending intentionally rather than unconsciously, watching what is happening with your dollars and using them ultimately in a way that brings you joy. Here's the beautiful thing about the math we just walked through. If you do these things consistently, you don't need to live miserably for 17 years. You need to live thoughtfully. And thoughtful living and joyful living are not opposites. So let me bring this all back together. The median American between ages 45 and 55 has about $100,000 saved. And most retirement content treats that person like they've already failed, like the math doesn't work, like the best they can hope for is to work until 75 and then cross their fingers and pray. But that's not what the data shows. What the data shows in this. In our example, when we looked at the 5% conservative situation, we very well could generate perhaps a tight but workable income. Social Security is doing far more work than most people realize, and optimizing it is one of the highest leverage decisions available. One extra year of work, just one, can close almost half the gap, even in the conservative case. Fixed expenses can matter more than your savings rate. Going into retirement debt-free can be more powerful than market returns. And the years between ages 60 and 70 can be incredibly powerful. You have a lot of levers you can pull during this time. So if you think you're behind, use these years wisely. For most Americans, their retirement is not built in their 20s through a handful of years of maxing out a 401k. Most Americans don't do that. For most Americans, their real retirement is built in the last 10 or 15 years of their working career. So use that time wisely. So if this is you, if this is your situation, the goal isn't perfection. The goal is what direction are you heading? Are you moving yourself towards stability or are you moving away from it? Look at what your fixed expenses are, create a plan for Social Security, create an overall financial plan, and you'll find that you might be in a better scenario than you might have imagined. A great retirement can still be within reach as long as you take deliberate steps. So what are your thoughts on someone who might be 50 years old with $100,000 invested? Leave a comment down below. I think this one might stir up some feelings. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. Or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye. There's no more FICA, no more Medicare contribution. I feel like it's like a mumble. It's a lot. It's like a mumble. Don't do that. Okay. Sorry. Pep talk for myself on this Monday morning. Then you also have the Now I also think it's worth oh my goodness, falling apart. That's what happens when you take time off. Don't say aggressive. Be aggressive. Okay, it's a thing. It's a thing. If you're a girl, grew up in the 90s, you know. Bring It On, great movie.